My name is Letha Colby. I'm 47 years old. And on a Tuesday morning, April 8th, while I was loading the dishwasher, I died. There was no warning, no big dramatic moment. 1 second, I was rinsing a coffee cup, thinking about the parent-teacher conferences I had that afternoon. The next, a strange little pop happened behind my eyes. It wasn't loud. It was soft, like a light bulb giving out. The world just tilted. The sound of the running water faded away like someone was slowly turning down the volume on my life. And then everything went black. Before that moment, my life was completely, wonderfully, boringly normal. Letha Colby's life was simple, steady, and wrapped in the quiet rhythms of small-town North Carolina. At 47, she had the kind of existence that rarely draws attention, but it was full of the kind of details that make a life beautiful in its ordinariness. She was a teacher's aide at the local elementary school, married for 23 years to Brandon, and mother to 2 children, Tyler, a freshman in college, and Katie, a middle schooler still finding her voice. She found joy in the laughter of children in hallways, in the smell of crayons, and the sound of pencils scratching across worksheets. Her faith was present, but it sat in the background of her days, like a blanket folded neatly in a chest. It was there for comfort, not daily conversation. On the morning of April 8th, she rose before dawn. The spring air was cool, and the house hummed with silence while her husband still slept and her daughter shuffled papers together for school. She made coffee, rinsed a cup, and thought about the parent-teacher conferences she had to attend later in the day. It was an ordinary Tuesday, no drama, no signs of what was about to unfold. Then it happened. A small pop behind her eyes, no louder than a light bulb giving out. The running water from the faucet dimmed, fading like someone slowly turning down the volume on her life. Her knees buckled, and she crumpled to the floor, the blue coffee mug still in her hand. She didn't feel pain. She didn't even feel fear. Instead, there was a strange clarity, a quiet moment suspended outside of time. She looked down and saw her body lying on the kitchen floor. The yellow curtains fluttered gently at the window. The toast she had left half-eaten sat cooling on the counter. Her husband's muffled scream tore into the silence. He had run into the room, his face twisted in terror, shaking her limp body, shouting her name. His voice echoed like it was underwater, distant, fragile. She wanted to reach him, to calm him, to tell him she was still here. But she had no voice, no body. She was only awareness, watching her life unravel like a film projected on a screen. Then came the pull. It was soft, not frightening. Not from the body lying below her, but from a direction beyond. It felt like being carried by a gentle current. The kitchen dissolved, its edges fading like a photograph losing its color. Her husband's desperate cries drifted away. She was being drawn into something vast, silent, and strangely familiar. The world she entered was not filled with walls, nor ceiling, nor floor. It wasn't blackness either. It was peace, thick, heavy peace that seemed to press against her soul and yet cradle it at the same time. It was silence, but not empty silence. It was alive, breathing, pulsing with an invisible presence. For the first time in her life, she felt a rest deeper than sleep, a stillness that absorbed every worry she had ever carried. The grief of losing her father when she was 19, the anxieties of bills and leaky faucets, the nagging doubts of whether she was a good enough wife or mother, all of it simply slipped away, like dust carried off by the wind. She realized she was weightless, stripped of everything that bound her to earth. Ahead of her, in that expanse of peace, appeared a light. At first, it was faint, like a star against an endless horizon. But it grew. It pulsed, warmed, and moved closer. Its warmth wrapped around her like the hug of a mother, safe and unconditional. The light wasn't harsh or blinding. It was alive, swirling with colors she had never seen, vibrating with a love she couldn't explain. She wanted it more than she had ever wanted anything. She longed to sink into it, to be swallowed by it, to dissolve into its embrace. And then, as it drew near, she saw him. The light was not just brightness. It had form, the form of a man. Not a man in robes and sandals, not the image painted in churches, but a presence of living light, of ageless eyes that held galaxies in their gaze. His face was indescribable, both ancient and young, fierce and tender. Every secret Letha had ever carried, every shame she had hidden, every wound she had buried, all of it flashed through her mind as his eyes met hers. And yet, she felt no condemnation, only love. That love hit her like a wave. It broke her open. Tears poured from her soul, not of sadness, but of release, of relief, of finally being home. She didn't need to ask who he was. Her spirit already knew. This was Jesus. He didn't speak with sound. His voice was a current that flowed through her, a thought so clear it was louder than any words. Welcome home, little one. Be at peace. Her entire being melted into those words. For the first time, she felt whole. For the first time, she knew she was seen completely and loved completely at once. Every broken piece of her soul was gathered into his embrace. She felt both eternity and a fleeting second collapsing together. Time no longer mattered. But as she basked in that radiant embrace, she sensed there was more. She had been brought not only to be loved, but to learn, to be shown something. And she was ready. The current that carried her deeper into the peace now wrapped itself around her, pulling her closer to the brilliance that was alive in front of her. You would have felt it too, that irresistible draw, that sense of home so strong that every thread of your soul stretches toward it. The kitchen, the broken body on the floor, the cries of her husband, all of it had faded like echoes of a dream, leaving only the gravity of love. Jesus stood before her, though stood isn't quite right. He was everywhere at once, both near and far, overwhelming yet intimate, infinite yet personal. His body was light, alive and moving, streaming with shades and colors she could not name. His presence was like a river flowing in all directions, a force and a gentleness combined. You would have noticed the stillness within him, yet felt the heartbeat of creation pulsing from his being. As his gaze held her, Letha became aware of herself in a new way. She wasn't the woman lying on the floor anymore. She wasn't the woman who folded laundry and worried about Katie's homework. She wasn't the woman who counted grocery coupons or cried quietly at night when stress became too heavy. She was soul, pure awareness, and he was reading her like an open book. Every memory, every thought, every action, nothing was hidden. But instead of fear, instead of shame, she felt a wave of acceptance so deep it undid her. He saw the nights she doubted his existence, the bitterness she sometimes felt in her heart, the way she compared herself to others and secretly thought she was failing. He saw all of it, and still, his light didn't dim. His love only intensified. The peace that surrounded her was not silence anymore. It was a conversation without words. Jesus was speaking without speaking, pouring his love directly into the core of who she was. The way you would feel the sun on your skin after a long winter, that was how his presence felt, except the warmth was not on her skin but in her soul. And then came the realization, this was not just a greeting. This was not just a homecoming. This was preparation. He was about to show her the truth of her life. And with it, the truth of all human lives. A flicker passed through the light, and in an instant, Letha saw her earthly years stretched out like pages of a book. She saw herself at 6 years old, kneeling by her bed in her grandmother's house, whispering prayers she barely understood. She saw herself as a teenager, laughing with friends but hiding her loneliness inside. She saw herself on her wedding day, trembling with both joy and fear. Every scene of her life was alive again, not as dry memory, but as a living moment. She could feel them all, the nervous excitement, the hidden shame, the quiet triumphs. And through it all, Jesus was present, standing beside her in each memory, waiting patiently for her to see him. She gasped as the realization struck her. She had never been alone, not once. The loneliness she thought she carried by herself had never been hers alone to bear. Her soul shook with both awe and sorrow. You know the feeling, when you suddenly realize the truth has been beside you all along, and yet you missed it, you overlooked it, you rushed past it. That was the emotion flooding her now. Jesus let her feel the weight of that truth, but his presence never condemned. It was like a teacher guiding gently, showing her what was real without anger, only tenderness. The weight was meant to awaken, not crush. For the first time, she understood that this moment wasn't random. She hadn't been pulled here by accident. There was a purpose. There was a message. His eyes glowed deeper, brighter, like galaxies igniting. And in that glow, she heard, not with ears, but with spirit, the first whisper of what was coming. He would ask her 3 questions. 3 questions that were not tests in the way she feared, but mirrors. Mirrors that would show her the heart of her existence, the heart of every human life. She trembled at the thought, not out of fear of punishment, but because she knew she could not hide. Not here. Not in this light. Not in front of the one who saw her fully and loved her anyway. The peace thickened, deepened, and her anticipation grew. She knew the moment was drawing close. Soon, he would begin. The light holds her the way warm water holds a swimmer who finally stops fighting the current. You follow along easily now, breathing slower without noticing, because the air itself seems to breathe, soft in, softer out. His gaze doesn't strike like lightning. It settles like evening on a lake, layer upon layer, until everything sharp in her loosens and sinks. Every corner of Letha's story opens, not with the clatter of drawers flung wide, but with the quiet confidence of a hand that already knows where the keepsakes are stored. She remembers being 6, taught to fold small hands and whisper a prayer before sleep. She remembers 15, pressing a smile over the ache that no one seemed to detect. She remembers the wedding dress, a whisper of fabric and hope, and the first crib assembled in a hallway with a single bulb humming overhead. She also remembers the small envies, the clipped words to herself, the exhausted judgments that rushed out when no one was watching. The light does not recoil. It simply remains. In that remaining, she learns. Awe becomes the current emotion, and you recognize it in your own bones as you listen. It isn't the awe of fireworks or thunder, but the quieter kind, the awe you feel when dawn finds you awake and patient. It collects behind the eyes and warms the chest. She realizes that nothing has been hidden, not the gracious moments nor the petty ones, and somehow the knowledge does not crush her. The revelation lands with the gentleness of a feather on still water. There is a sensation of arrival, a homecoming with no keys or thresholds. If home had a temperature, it would be this, neither hot nor cold, but perfectly tuned to the soul's bare skin. If home had a sound, it would be the hush of a mother's hand smoothing a child's hair. If home had a texture, it would be the soft weave of a well-loved blanket, not heavy, not light, exactly enough. 3 quiet comforts cradle her there, warmth without burning, weight without burden, presence without demand. She notices how time behaves differently in this place. It does not march or drip. It opens like a flower, all petals at once, each moment of life fragrant and reachable. A small, useful tidbit comes with that understanding. The soul stores memory not only as images, but as full weather, the air, the taste, the ache, the hidden motive. Here, touching a memory means stepping back into its atmosphere. She steps into many. The hallway where she scolded herself for not being enough. The grocery parking lot where she looked away from a stranger's eyes. The night she lay awake wondering if God was real or simply a comforting story named to keep loneliness from spreading. In each scene, the light is there, not hovering above like a judge, but near and low like a friend kneeling to tie a child's shoe. She recognizes the subtle nudge she used to call coincidence, the thought to call someone, the impulse to be kinder, the small inner warmth when she chose patience instead of sharpness. He had been weaving through every minute, a thread impossible to see until the fabric is turned in certain light. Her relief builds until it becomes a physical sensation, like a band loosening around her ribs. The old fear of judgment, of failing some perfect standard, slips like a bracelet sliding off a wrist. She admits to herself, and to the one who already knows, that she spent years trying to become worthy, as if love were a merit badge. The light answers without words, more warmth, more steadiness, the kind of silence that says stay, breathe, heal. You feel yourself doing the same. In that silence, her ordinary life gleams in a way she had never granted it. The lunchbox notes she tucked for Katie. The long drives to Tyler's practices. The casseroles carried to neighbors after surgeries and storms. The stacks of sight word cards. None of it insignificant. Yet the light shows the missed notes too. The hurried answers, the eyes that didn't meet other eyes, the dam she built against receiving what she most needed. Kindness from the very God she claimed to believe in. It is tender, this showing, like a nurse changing a bandage. Gentle hands, clean light, no hurry. 3 more gentle forms arrive as companions to her awe. A breath that keeps meeting her breath until they move together. A low hum at the edge of hearing that soothes the nervous system. A touch like warm rain on summer skin. With them, another layer of self-protection lifts. She stops rehearsing excuses. There is no audience for excuses here. There is only presence, and presence prefers truth. Her mind, slippery with old habits, reaches for rules and measurements. How much prayer counts? How good is good enough? But the light doesn't organize her life into tallies. It organizes it into circles, receiving, seeing, giving, river in, river through, river on. She senses the 3 questions to come circling the shore of her attention, not as legal interrogations, but as invitations. When they arrive, they will arrive like doors that open inward. The body she left behind becomes faint, like a radio tuned to a distant station. She remembers the halved toast, the blue mug, the yellow curtains fluttering in the window over the sink. The details are almost tender to her now, proof that the ordinary can be holy in the right light. She realizes that holiness is not always bright. Sometimes it is the dim lamp you switch on at dawn so as not to wake the house. He keeps looking, and in his looking she learns that being known is not dangerous. It is oxygen. A thin smile rises from someplace truer than her mouth. It rises from the part of her that has wanted this knowing since childhood. She makes no speeches. She simply agrees to be seen. The agreement feels like stepping barefoot onto warm wood after years of standing on cold tile. The peace thickens once more, like the quiet in a chapel after candles have been lit, and a readiness gathers in her. If there is a posture of soul that means yes, she adopts it, shoulders lowered, hands open, chin lifted just enough to meet the gaze that never once looked away. You find yourself copying that posture inside your own small room, the way a listener unconsciously mirrors the storyteller's breath. Nothing in the light rushes. Patience here is not waiting, it is fullness. The questions approach with the gravity and kindness of tides. She senses their shapes, one about receiving what is already offered, one about recognizing who hides in plain sight, and one about what to do with what hurts. The shapes are enough for now. The heart steadies. The world inside her steadies. Awe remains, then deepens into consent. She is not required to perform. She is asked to open. The difference changes everything. And in that difference, Letha is finally ready. The hush deepened, and the air, or what felt like air, trembled with a weight that was not heavy but holy. You lean in as Letha leaned in, because you can sense it too. This is the turning, the moment when love begins to question. His eyes, galaxies within galaxies, softened until they were close enough to touch. And then his voice, not spoken but seated inside her, rose like a river welling from the ground of her being. Did you let me love you? The question startled her. She had braced for judgment, for a scroll of sins read aloud, for the harsh reckoning she always suspected waited at the end. Instead, it was this. Not, did you love me? Not, did you obey enough? Not, did you measure up? But simply, did you let me love you? Her first reaction was to defend. She wanted to list the evidence. Sunday mornings in pews, whispered prayers before bed, folded Bibles on the nightstand. She wanted to say, I tried, Lord. I believed. I did my best. But his hand lifted, and the light from it silenced her. Not harshly, but the way dawn silences the dark. Then he showed her. Scenes unfolded around her like living windows. She saw herself kneeling by her bed, speaking words of prayer, but her heart locked tight like a door bolted from the inside. She watched herself asking for forgiveness, asking for help, but never stilling long enough to let his love wash in. The prayers had been more like reports, businesslike, with her speaking and him listening, while all the while his love streamed toward her like a golden river she never opened to drink from. A wave of memory pulled her under. Just weeks before her death, when she had made a small mistake at work, she had carried shame like a stone in her pocket all night, replaying her failure until it carved grooves in her mind. In the replay, she saw what she had missed, Jesus right there, his love pressing against her like warmth on the cold skin of her soul. But she had refused it. She had damned it off with unworthiness, convinced she didn't deserve to be comforted. More moments came, nights of exhaustion where she collapsed in bed but pushed away the quiet whisper inviting her to rest in him. Mornings of anxiety where she rehearsed all her tasks instead of pausing to breathe his presence in. Holidays spent rushing to make everything perfect, while his love waited in the silence between tasks. Always there, always offered, always ignored. The sorrow of it broke her. Not sorrow at being scolded, but sorrow at realizing what she had missed. She had lived as though God's love was a prize for effort, when in truth it was the soil beneath her every step. She had been so busy proving herself that she had never simply received. Her soul wept, not with despair but with regret, so deep it felt like a cavern. The words slipped out of her, fragile as a whisper. No, I didn't. Not really. I didn't know how. And then his smile broke her open all over again. Pure grace. Pure tenderness. Not anger, not disappointment. A smile that held eternity's patience. His presence answered without thunder, just steady truth. It is the hardest and the simplest thing, to be loved. The moment flooded her with a new kind of knowing. She saw it wasn't about earning, striving, or proving. It wasn't about building a tower tall enough to reach him. It was about opening, about letting the river in, about unclenching the fists that held on to guilt and shame and simply letting the warmth flow. You feel it too, don't you? That shift from clenched to open, from effort to surrender. That's the lesson unfolding before her eyes. The first question echoing not only for her, but for every soul. Will you let him love you? And as she sank into that love, as her regret met his mercy, she realized the question was not condemnation. It was invitation. The first question still rang inside her, not as an accusation but as an echo, circling again and again. Did you let me love you? The words glowed in the silence, brighter than a sunrise, and they unsettled her because she finally saw how much she had missed. You feel it too as you hear it, because that question is not just for her. It brushes against you, pressing softly but firmly, asking what your own heart has been doing with love. Letha stood in that light, trembling with recognition. She thought of the way she prayed, all those years spent talking at God instead of resting in Him. She thought of nights when shame dug its claws into her heart, nights when she rehearsed failures like they were songs on repeat. Instead of opening to His comfort, she built walls, thinking herself unworthy of healing. Jesus showed her these moments, and each one was so vivid she could smell the air again, feel the weight in her chest again, see the lonely glow of the bedside lamp. He revealed how His love had been constant, pressing like a tide against the dam of her own heart. She had mistaken the dam for strength. She thought strength was soldiering on, patching herself up, forcing smiles, carrying burdens alone. She realized now that real strength would have been surrender, letting Him pour into her wounds instead of wrapping them in silence. The sorrow that swept through her was almost unbearable. You felt it too, that ache when you suddenly realize how much has been lost, not because it wasn't given, but because you refused to receive it. She wept without tears, because in this place the soul itself could cry, every sob vibrating through her being. And then the lesson unfolded like a soft tide. Jesus showed her something small but undeniable. Love doesn't have to be earned, only received. He revealed that every morning she woke up was an act of His love. Every laugh from her children, every hug, every unexpected kindness from a stranger, they had all been rivers of His love flowing toward her. Yet she had taken them as ordinary, forgetting the source. 3 gentle forms came to cradle her in the realization. First, a fragrance like blooming jasmine, faint but undeniable, stirred through the air of her soul. Second, a warmth traced across her shoulders, like sunlight settling into weary muscles. Third, a rhythm pulsed through her chest, not her own heartbeat, but His, steady and deep, as if to remind her, "You live because I love." The tidbit she learned in that moment was this: the soul resists love not because love is absent, but because the heart believes it is unworthy. She saw herself, and so many others, caught in that lie. People laboring to prove themselves, building towers of effort, measuring their worth in checklists of good deeds, all the while refusing to believe the river is already flowing. Letha whispered to Him in her heart, "I didn't let you love me. Not really. I didn't know how." And His light responded without words at first, just more love, more peace. Then the voice like waterfalls and whispers together answered, "It is the hardest and simplest thing, to be loved." His words filled her with both comfort and challenge. She understood now that heaven's first question is not about rule-keeping or spotless records. It is about openness. Did she allow herself to be held, healed, and carried by the love that had always been there? And for the first time, she let it happen. She stopped resisting. She stopped defending. She stopped trying to be worthy. She let herself be small, and in being small, she became whole. The first question had been answered, not perfectly, but honestly. She had not let Him love her as she should. But in that moment, she finally began. The silence held her like a warm tide, but she knew the silence would not last. Something in the gaze of Jesus shifted, not withdrawing, never withdrawing, but moving deeper, like a lantern carried into the inner chambers of her soul. You feel it too, the subtle weight of anticipation, because the first question had stripped her open, and now another would follow. His light pulsed once, twice, and then it came, not as thunder, but as a whisper that filled every corner of her being. "Did you see me in the people I sent to you?" The question landed like a stone dropped into clear water, and ripples spread outward through her memory. She wanted to answer quickly, to point to moments when she had volunteered at the school food drive, when she had smiled at neighbors, when she had written cards for grieving friends. She opened her mouth and her heart to reply, but she stopped, because she already knew the answer would not hold. His eyes told her He would show her the truth. Scenes began to appear, shimmering in the space around them. She was back in the grocery store parking lot on a cold winter's afternoon. A man stood outside the doors, dirty, disheveled, with a paper cup in his hands. She remembered the quick stab of discomfort, the mixture of pity and annoyance. She had dropped $1 into his cup, but refused to meet his eyes. Now, watching it replay, she saw what she had missed. Behind the grime, behind the smell, there was a spark of light in his chest, a flickering flame of divinity, the very image of God, fragile and radiant at once. And then, in an instant, she saw His face, Jesus' face, hidden in the man's face. The sorrow of it cut her. How could she have missed Him there? Another scene unfolded. She was at work, sitting across from a coworker known for gossip. She remembered smiling politely, listening with half her attention while secretly judging. Now she saw beneath the chatter, the loneliness in the coworker's heart, the ache that drove her to fill silence with words. Jesus was there too, quietly asking for compassion through that woman's pain. The reel of her life spun on. She saw her husband Brandon, weary from a long day, trying to talk to her about struggles at his job. She saw herself scrolling through her phone, half listening, distracted, thinking more about her to-do list than his breaking spirit. She saw the look in his eyes when he realized she wasn't truly present. Jesus was in that moment too, in the quiet plea of her husband's voice, asking to be seen, to be heard, to be loved. The most painful moment came when her daughter Katie's face appeared. A teenage meltdown, the slammed door, the tears. Letha remembered her own frustration, her sharp words, her impatience. But now she saw Jesus shining through her daughter's anger, not as rebellion, but as a desperate cry for understanding. He had been in those eyes, waiting for her to notice him, waiting for her to love him and the child he had entrusted to her. The grief of recognition consumed her. She wept in her soul, her whole being bowing with regret. "I didn't see you," she admitted at last. "I saw flaws. I saw inconvenience. I saw my own judgment. I didn't look for you. I'm so sorry." 3 gentle forms rose to meet her sorrow, wrapping it not with dismissal, but with mercy. First, a cool breeze passed through her spirit, lifting the weight just enough so she could breathe. Second, a hush of music, faint like bells in the distance, rang in her chest. Third, a sensation like strong arms steadying her shoulders, reminding her she was not crushed, not abandoned, but held. Jesus' love flowed toward her sorrow like a covering of gold over cracked pottery. He did not erase the truth, but he redeemed it, showing her that repentance was not meant to destroy but to awaken. "The whole world is filled with me," his voice pressed into her spirit, hiding in plain sight. "Your only task is to look with the eyes of your heart." The tidbit of wisdom struck her deeply. It was not enough to do small acts of kindness while keeping her heart blind. To live awake meant to search for him in every face, every voice, every interruption. She realized now that heaven's second question was this: not whether she was polite, not whether she gave donations, not whether she smiled at strangers, but whether she recognized him standing right in front of her. The sorrow of her blindness mingled with relief, because now she saw. She could never unsee again. Her soul bent low, the way a tree bows in the wind, not out of breaking but out of surrender. You lean with her, because you can feel the ache that comes when vision finally clears and you realize how blind you have been. The second question had not condemned her, it had revealed her. It had shown her how many times she had walked past his face, veiled in ordinary people, in inconvenient people, in people who tested her patience. Jesus let her feel the sorrow of it, but he did not leave her drowning in that sorrow. His presence drew near, his light brighter, warmer, as if to say, "Yes, you missed me, but now you see, and that is what matters." His mercy covered her regret like fresh snow covering jagged ground, soft, pure, and quiet. Images still lingered in the air, and each one cut deeper than the last. She saw the cashier at the grocery store, snapping at her impatiently. Instead of looking deeper, she had rolled her eyes and muttered under her breath. But in the replay, she saw the exhaustion in the woman's spirit, the heavy burden of a sick child at home, the sleepless nights etched into her posture. And there was Jesus, present in that very weariness, asking for compassion. Then came the difficult parent at the elementary school where she worked, the one who always complained, always demanded more. She remembered feeling irritated, even superior in her patience. Now she saw the truth. That parent carried deep fear, fear of failing their child, fear of not being enough. And there, in the fear, was Jesus, waiting for her to respond not with judgment, but with gentleness. Scene after scene, moment after moment, ordinary days replayed with extraordinary meaning. And each time, Jesus was there, not in grandeur, not in fire and thunder, but in human faces, fragile and flawed, yearning to be recognized. The realization sank into her like heavy rain into parched soil. Love was never meant to be reserved for the easy or the lovely. Love was meant to search, to look beyond, to recognize the divine spark in the ones most easily dismissed. 3 gentle forms came again to steady her awakening. First, a fragrance like bread fresh from the oven filled her senses, reminding her of communion, of daily sustenance. Second, a tender light brushed across her vision, not harsh, but like morning mist parting before the sun. Third, a hum, low and steady, echoed through her being, the sound of creation itself breathing with her. These comforts made it bearable to face the truth. The tidbit she received in that moment was simple but piercing. Blindness to others is blindness to him. Every time she chose convenience over compassion, every time she avoided the difficult gaze, She had missed a chance to love Christ himself. It was not a metaphor. It was reality. Her sobs deepened, no longer just for her own failures, but for the blindness of the whole world. How many people walked past Jesus every day without seeing? How many ignored him in the poor, the angry, the lonely, the inconvenient? The sorrow became intercession, her tears pleading not only for herself, but for every heart still closed. Jesus' voice came again, soft yet filled with authority. My child, the world is filled with me, hidden in plain sight. You are never without a chance to see me. Never. She clung to those words. They were not a rebuke, they were hope. If the world was filled with him, then every day was filled with opportunity. Every interruption was an invitation. Every stranger was a chance to touch his presence. Her heart bowed even lower, humbled, but also lifted by mercy. For the first time she understood what it meant when Scripture said he was with the least of these. It was not poetry. It was literal truth. And in that knowing, she felt her eyes opening in a new way, eyes of the heart that could finally see what had been hidden in plain sight all along. The peace lingered, but within it stirred a deeper current, one that reached places she had hidden even from herself. You sense it too, because his questions were moving layer by layer, peeling back the surface until only the truth of the soul remained. The light pressed closer, and with it came the third and final question. What did you do with the wounds I allowed? The words struck her differently than the others, slower, heavier, like a stone placed gently in her hands. Her mind tried to deflect at first. Wounds. She thought of the scars on her knee from childhood falls, the small aches of daily living. But in his gaze, she knew this question wasn't about the body. It was about the soul. Instantly, one memory rose above the rest. She was 19 again, sitting on the edge of her bed, the world shattered by her father's sudden death from a heart attack. The grief had pierced her so deeply it carved a permanent hollow inside. She had carried that hollow like a secret pocket, never showing it, never speaking of it, convinced silence was strength. She thought burying it kept her safe, but now she saw the truth. She had built a wall that not only kept others out, but also kept healing out. Jesus showed her the wound as he saw it. Not just a memory, but a living stone lodged inside her spirit, heavy and sharp. Then he showed her moments in her life where that wound could have become a bridge. She saw the young woman at school whose father was battling cancer. She remembered patting her on the arm, offering only shallow words of comfort. What she hadn't offered was herself, her story, her pain, her empathy. She had the very medicine that woman needed, but she had kept it sealed away. Scene after scene revealed the same truth. Her wounds were never punishments. They were assignments, gifts hidden in sorrow, meant to open pathways into other people's pain. The loneliness she once felt could have become compassion for another lonely soul. The shame she carried could have become tenderness for someone drowning in regret. The grief she clutched to her chest could have become understanding arms for another grieving heart. Instead, she had hoarded her pain, guarding it like a treasure, afraid to expose its rawness. The sorrow of realization broke over her like a wave. She saw how she had wasted the redemptive power of her suffering. She wept, her soul trembling. I didn't use them, she admitted silently. I kept them for myself. I didn't know. 3 gentle forms answered her despair, holding it so it did not destroy her. First, warmth spread through her soul like a fire on a cold night, reminding her that even regret could be healed. Second, a sound like rain falling on parched soil echoed softly, promising renewal. Third, a light breeze passed through her spirit, carrying away the heaviness she thought she would never release. The tidbit she received was this. The deepest wounds are not weights to drag you down, but tools meant to lift others up. What breaks you can become the very thing that binds another soul back together, if you let him use it. Jesus' voice washed through her like a tide, calm but unshakable. Your wounds are not wasted, little one. They are seeds, planted in my hands. They bloom into healing for the world. She bowed her spirit, humbled, undone, but strangely comforted. For the first time, she saw her pain not as meaningless tragedy, but as sacred assignment. Even the darkest places of her story had purpose. And in that revelation, her heart softened. She no longer wished to hide the wounds. She wanted to hold them out to him. Let him take them. Let him use them. The third question was answered, not with pride, not with accomplishment, but with surrender. She had failed before, yes. But now she understood. And with understanding came hope. Her soul trembled beneath the weight of the 3 questions. They had stripped her bare, not with cruelty, but with truth. She had not let him love her. She had not truly seen him in the people around her. She had not used her wounds to heal others. By every measure she had feared on earth, she had failed. And the old reflex rose again, the fear of judgment, the dread of rejection. You know that fear too, the one that whispers you are never enough, never worthy, never ready. She waited for the hammer to fall. She expected disappointment etched across his radiant face, the kind of look that says, I gave you everything, and you squandered it. She braced for the sentence, for the eternal distance she believed she deserved. But the light did not dim. The love did not withdraw. Instead, the warmth deepened, wrapping her more tightly than ever. And then Jesus moved. He stepped, or rather, his presence flowed, closer, and she felt his embrace. It was not arms of flesh, but arms of living light, pulling her into himself. The sorrow that had threatened to crush her dissolved like mist in the morning sun. His voice thundered and whispered at once, filling her with more grace than she could contain. This is not judgment. It is awakening. The words shattered her fear. They rang through her like bells in a cathedral, truth vibrating in every corner of her being. It wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about tallying good deeds against failures. It was about learning to love, about living open, about becoming a vessel for mercy. Her failures had not disqualified her. They had prepared her for this awakening. Relief swept through her soul in waves, stronger than any tide she had known. She wept again, but these were not tears of regret. They were tears of gratitude, of being carried when she had expected to be cast aside. You can feel it as she felt it. That dizzying release when mercy comes rushing in where you only expected punishment. 3 gentle forms surrounded her, reinforcing the truth. First, a glow like golden dawn expanded within her chest, reminding her that new beginnings are possible even beyond the grave. Second, a melody hummed low and steady, the song of creation whispering that she still belonged. Third, a fragrance of wildflowers drifted through her awareness, fresh and unearned, the scent of grace. The tidbit she understood now was profound. God's questions are not traps to condemn, but invitations to awaken. Heaven is less about judgment than about realization, seeing yourself fully, seeing him fully, and choosing at last to align with love. Her spirit lifted, soaring within his embrace. She no longer felt small and ashamed. She felt like a child held against her father's chest, safe, known, adored. All the striving of her earthly years melted away. All the fear of failure collapsed. Love was the beginning, love was the middle, love was the end. But even in that bliss, she felt something stir. The embrace was tender, but it carried a mission. His love was not only for her to receive, but for her to carry back. The truth pressed into her. This awakening was not the end of her story. She had to return. She had to bring the questions with her, to live them out, to speak them aloud so others could awaken too. Her heart clenched. She didn't want to leave. She wanted to stay in the warmth, in the safety, in the light of his arms. But his eyes, galaxies upon galaxies, held both tenderness and command. They told her without words, you have seen, and now you must go. Others are waiting. Your family is waiting. The world is waiting. And she knew, even before the pull began, that her time in this place was almost over. The pull came again, gentle but unstoppable, like the tide reclaiming a shell left on the sand. Letha clung to the light with all the longing of a child clutching her father's hand, whispering without words, please, don't make me go. Let me stay. I'm so tired. I just want to rest here with you forever. The answer was love, but it was firm. His embrace lingered, but the current pulled her backward. I will be with you, his eyes seemed to say, galaxies shimmering with compassion. But your work is not finished. Go and live the answers. Show your family what love looks like. Show the world. The heartbreak of leaving him was worse than death itself. To feel that love, and then to let it go, it tore her open. But the pull grew stronger, and the light began to fade, replaced by the sound of machines, harsh fluorescent brightness, and frantic voices. She gasped. Air burned in her chest like fire. Pain stabbed her head. A nurse's cry pierced the blur. We've got a pulse. She's back. Hands pressed against her, wires clung to her skin, and the world was too loud, too sharp, too cold. Her husband's face appeared above her, streaked with tears, eyes wide with disbelief. Letha, oh God, you're alive. He grabbed her hand, as though he could anchor her to earth. Later they told her she had been gone for 11 minutes. A brain aneurysm had stopped her life in an instant, and by every medical account she should have died, or at least awakened broken, damaged, unable to speak or think. But she came back whole. Doctors called it a miracle. She knew it was more than that. It was a gift, an assignment. A year has passed since that Tuesday morning. On the outside, her life looks the same. The same house, the same school, the same rhythms of family life. But inside, nothing is the same. The 3 questions live in her like fire. Every morning she asks herself, am I letting him love me right now? When shame rises, when busyness tries to close her heart, she remembers to open, to receive, to rest. Every afternoon she asks, do I see him in the people he sends to me? The cashier, the co-worker, her husband, her daughter, all of them carry his hidden face. Some days she still fails, but now her eyes are awake. And every night she asks, what am I doing with the wounds he allowed? The grief over her father's death, the scars of mistakes, the private struggles, she no longer hides them. She shares them, offers them, lets them become bridges. Pain has turned into medicine. She has told her story to many. Some laugh, some doubt, some weep. But for those who listen, she repeats the same message. Heaven is real. Jesus is alive. And the questions he asked her, he is asking you too. Are you letting him love you right now, as you are? Do you see him in the people around you, even the difficult ones? What are you doing with the wounds he allowed? Are you burying them, or are you using them to heal? These questions are not traps. They are a roadmap. They lead you back to his heart, back to the love that is waiting for you even now. Letha knows her time on earth is shorter now, but she walks differently. She speaks differently. Her faith is no longer a folded blanket in a chest. It is the air she breathes, the water she drinks, the light she carries. And one day, when her journey truly ends, she knows she will hear his voice again, not in a hospital room, not in sorrow, but in glory. And this time, the pull will not bring her back. This time, she will stay. Breathe slowly now. Let the story settle into you, like embers glowing in the dark. What happened to Letha was not for her alone. It was for you too. 3 questions from Jesus, simple and piercing, meant not to condemn, but to awaken. The first, did you let me love you? Not, did you earn it? Not, did you achieve it? But did you open your heart to the river already flowing? Tonight, in this very moment, you can. The second, did you see me in the people I sent to you? Not only in saints or in songs, but in the poor, the weary, the annoying, the overlooked. His face is hidden in plain sight. Look again. The third, what did you do with the wounds I allowed? Your pain is not wasted. Your tears are not meaningless. Every wound can become a key to unlock another soul's prison if you will place it in his hands. Let these questions rest in you. Let them work on you. They are not tests. They are invitations. They are the path back to his heart. Heaven is real, but you do not need to wait until death to begin living in its love. The kingdom is near, as close as your next breath. You can let him love you now. You can see him in the next person you meet. You can allow your wounds to become bridges, not barriers. If these words resonate with you, please leave an amen in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and share it with at least 3 friends or family members right now. Now is your time to make a difference. Spreading this message is not only an act of love, but also a mission that Jesus himself has entrusted to you.